Flames devoured the night sky, painting the horizon in red as screams echoed through the broken village. Smoke clung to the air like a curse, choking the last remnants of peace. Amid the chaos, a young woman stumbled barefoot through the ash, clutching nothing but the memory of all she had lost. Her home was gone, her family buried in fire, and in that burning silence, fate placed her in the path of a stranger. The village was nothing more than a graveyard of charred beams and collapsing roofs. The once familiar streets where children had played and elders had traded stories under the shade of the great oak, now stretched like a corridor of ruin. Embers clung to the air, glowing faintly as if mocking the silence that followed destruction. Alara moved through the devastation, her body trembling with exhaustion, her heart breaking with every step. Barefoot, her skin tore against shards of burnt wood, but the pain barely reached her. She was numb, carrying grief heavier than her small frame could bear. Her father's voice still echoed in her ears, his final command before the flames swallowed him whole. Run. She had obeyed, but every step away from him felt like betrayal. She wanted to turn back, wanted to fight the fire with her bare hands if it meant one more breath from him. But the blaze had been merciless, devouring her home, her family, her life in one brutal sweep. She stumbled against a broken wall, her knees buckling, tears carving tracks down her soot-streaked face. For the first time, she let herself whisper their names. Her mother, her younger brother, her father, each syllable a dagger that cut deeper than the wounds on her feet. Why them? The words escaped her lips in a broken sob. Why not me? The night answered with silence, except for the crackle of dying flames. Then came another sound, a rustle, faint but deliberate, just beyond the village's edge. Alara froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. Bandits, raiders, whoever had done this could still be near. She crouched low, clutching a splinter of wood like a dagger, though her hands shook too violently to wield it with any true threat. The figure emerged from the smoke, a tall silhouette, broad-shouldered with a cloak torn at the edges. His stride was steady, purposeful. In the dim firelight, his face remained hidden, but his presence alone sent a ripple of unease through her. Alara's breath hitched. Should she run again, or stay and risk everything? The man stopped a few paces from her, lifting a hand slowly, palm open, not in threat but in silent offering. His voice, deep and steady, broke the stillness. You shouldn't be here. Her grip on the splinter tightened. This is my home. The man's eyes flickered with something, pity perhaps, or recognition, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He stepped closer and she flinched. Who are you? She demanded, her voice trembling more from fear than strength. Someone who knows what it's like to lose everything. His gaze shifted toward the burning ruins, his jaw tightening. But if you stay, you'll join them. Alara's chest constricted. The words pierced deeper than she expected, stirring both anger and despair. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him he could never understand, but the weight of his voice carried truth. Still, she did not trust him. Strangers meant danger. Strangers meant betrayal, and yet, in this emptiness, where the only company was the echo of death, his presence felt like the first threat of life. The wind shifted, carrying sparks from a collapsing roof. Flames leapt higher, threatening to spread into the trees beyond. The man's eyes snapped back to hers, urgency in their dark depths. You have two choices, he said, his tone sharp now. Stay and die with what's gone, or follow me into what's left. Her breath faltered. Her body screamed to collapse into the ash and let it take her, but her father's voice haunted her still. Run. Alara's hand loosened around the splinter. The stranger extended his again, waiting. The fire roared behind them, closing in, forcing a decision. And as the first sparks fell at her feet, Alara faced the unbearable truth. Stepping into the unknown with a stranger might be her only chance to survive. Alara stared at the stranger's hand, suspended between ruin and survival. The fire hissed behind her, crackling as another roof caved in with a thunderous crash. The sound jolted her forward, and before her heart could reason with her fear, her trembling fingers brushed against his. His grip was firm, steady, pulling her out of the ash-stained earth as if anchoring her to life itself. The stranger didn't waste words. He turned swiftly, leading her away from the collapsing village. Alara stumbled at first, her weak legs dragging, but his pace never faltered. The further they went, the darker the night became, the glow of the flames fading behind them until only the shadows of the forest remained. Her breaths came ragged, catching against the lump of grief in her throat. She wanted to scream at him, demand to know where he was taking her, but the silence of the forest pressed heavy. Even the crickets were hushed, as if the earth itself grieved the ruin she'd left behind. Finally, she forced the words out. Why are you helping me?" The man glanced over his shoulder. His eyes, now visible in the moonlight, were hard, like steel that had known fire. "Because I couldn't help mine." Ilara stumbled, his words striking deeper than she expected. She said nothing, afraid that asking more would unravel wounds too raw to touch. They pressed deeper into the woods until the smell of smoke thinned. Yet with every step, Ilara's doubts grew heavier. Who was this man? What if he was leading her into a different kind of death? She thought of her father's command again, run. But run where? Into the dark woods with no direction? Into a life with no one left to call her own? Her silence stretched until he finally stopped. They had reached a clearing where moonlight spilled across moss and stone. He released her hand and faced her, his figure tall, shadowed, unreadable. "You should rest," he said flatly. "We'll move at dawn." Ilara's body screamed for rest, yet her spirit resisted. "I don't even know your name." He hesitated, then answered, "Kaelin." The name carried weight, as if burdened by its own history. Ilara repeated it under her breath, tasting the unfamiliarity. "And what are you to me, Kaelin? Savior, kidnapper? A man wandering from his own ruins?" His jaw tightened. "What I am doesn't matter. What matters is that whoever destroyed your village will not stop there. If you linger, you'll be next." Her heart clenched. The thought hadn't pierced her grief until now. That the flames weren't an accident. That the faces behind them might still be hunting. Fear clawed its way into her chest, sharper than grief. Ilara hugged herself, her voice breaking. "Then where do I go?" "There's nothing left." Kaelin's gaze softened, just for a heartbeat. "Sometimes nothing is where you begin again." The words unsettled her, stirring both defiance and fragile hope. She wanted to argue, to reject him, but exhaustion weighed heavier. Her body trembled as she sank onto the cold ground, her mind replaying the fire, her family's faces, the screams swallowed by night. Kaelin lingered at the edge of the clearing, scanning the shadows, always alert. His stillness unnerved her. It was the stillness of a man used to danger, a man who expected it to come crawling out of the dark at any moment. The forest whispered with wind, but Ilara could not sleep. She stared at the stars through blurred eyes, her heart breaking with every memory. And when she finally closed her eyes, it wasn't rest that found her, but a vision. Her father's hand reaching out through fire, his voice echoing one word over and over. "Run!" She jolted awake, breath sharp, and for a moment she thought the nightmare had followed her. But then she realized the sound was real. Branches snapped in the distance. Shadows shifted between the trees. Kaelin's hand went to the blade at his side. His voice dropped, steady but grim. "They've found us." Ilara's chest tightened at Kaelin's words, her grief twisting into confusion. "The reason? What are you saying?" "My family. My village, they were innocent." Kaelin's jaw hardened, but his eyes flickered with something deeper, a shadow of regret. "Innocent, yes. But innocence doesn't stop men like them. Someone wanted you erased, Ilara, and they burned everything to make sure nothing remained." The earth seemed to shift beneath her. She shook her head, refusing to accept it. "No, I was no one. Just a daughter, a sister. They had no reason to." A sudden shout echoed above them. Torches flared at the ridge, the bandits spreading out, their voices sharp with fury. "They dropped down here. Find them!" Kaelin grabbed her arm, urgency flooding his voice. "Move!" They wove through the ravine, feet sinking into damp soil, the sound of rushing water growing louder. Ahead, the ground sloped toward a stream that shimmered faintly under the moon. Kaelin crouched low, gesturing for silence. They followed the water, its noise masking their steps. Behind them, the bandits crashed through the brush, closer than before. Ilara's breath hitched as torchlight danced along the ravine walls, searching, relentless. Every flicker of fire reminded her of the village, of her father's voice, of the scream swallowed by flame. "Run," she whispered to herself. Over and over until the word became a heartbeat. Kaelin halted abruptly, raising a hand. The stream widened into a pool ahead, its surface broken by jagged rocks. On the opposite bank, the forest thickened into a wall of black. It was the only way forward. "They'll see us if we cross," Alara whispered. "They'll kill us if we stay." Kalen's voice was steady, unyielding. Before she could argue, he plunged into the water, silent as shadow. Alara followed, the cold striking her bones like knives. Her breath came ragged, each movement a struggle against the current that tugged at her legs. The water rose to her waist, then her chest. She fought panic, forcing herself to keep moving. Halfway across, a shout erupted behind them. Torches blazed at the ravine's edge, light spilling onto the water. There, in the stream. Arrows whistled through the night. One struck the surface near Alara, spraying water against her face. She gasped, nearly losing her footing, but Kalen's hand shot out, steadying her. "Keep going," he barked. They stumbled onto the opposite bank just as another arrow hissed past. Kalen yanked her into the cover of trees, branches slapping their faces as they tore deeper into the forest. The shouts grew distant, the torches dimmer, but the fear clung to Alara like a second skin. Finally, Kalen slowed, pressing a hand against a tree, his breath controlled despite the chase. Alara collapsed against the earth, soaked, trembling, her tears mixing with river water. "They'll never stop," she whispered. Why me?" Kalen knelt before her, his gaze sharp but not unkind. "Because you are not no one, Alara. You are the spark they fear, and sparks, when left alive, grow into fire." Her throat tightened, unable to speak. The forest pressed in, heavy with silence, until the only sound was her uneven breath. She wanted answers, demanded them, but the truth that lingered in Kalen's eyes terrified her more than the bandits' pursuit. For the first time since the flames, Alara felt the weight of destiny settle on her shoulders, and it burned hotter than grief. The forest had grown heavier with silence, as though even the trees listened for what would come next. Alara sat hunched against a mossy trunk, her arms wrapped around her knees. The night's chase had stolen her strength, but it was the weight of Kalen's words that kept her from breathing freely. "You keep speaking as though you know me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But we've never met. How can you know who I am?" Kalen crouched nearby, his blade across his lap, sharpened edge glinting in the pale moonlight. His gaze stayed fixed on the shadows beyond the clearing, but his voice was low, steady. "I don't know you, not yet. But I know what men like them fear. And no army burns a village unless something, or someone there threatens their power." Ilara's stomach twisted. "You're saying I caused this? That my family died because of me?" His head turned sharply. "No, don't twist it into guilt. The blame belongs to them. They chose fire. They chose blood. But they wouldn't have done it unless they believed destroying you was worth the price." Her throat burned with unshed tears. She wanted to scream that he was wrong, that she was nothing but a farmer's daughter, a sister who braided her brother's hair and learned songs from her mother by the fire. But the memory of the serpent sigil on the bandit's armor gnawed at her, whispering of a deeper truth. The air shifted, carrying the faint hoot of an owl. Kalen's eyes scanned the tree line before softening back toward her. "You saw their mark, didn't you?" Alara hesitated, then nodded. "A serpent around a blade. It was carved into our gates days before the fire. The elders said it meant nothing." Kalen's lips pressed thin. "It means everything. That mark belongs to the Serpent Blades. A mercenary clan, ruthless, paid to silence threats before they grow." Ilara's chest tightened. "Who would hire them to kill us?" "We were poor," he cut her off, voice grim. "Not poor enough to be unseen. Someone wanted you erased, Alara. Someone with gold and power." The firelight of memory surged behind her eyes, every scream and crackle of burning wood a reminder of what had been stolen. But now fear curled inside her in a new shape, not of death but of a destiny she hadn't asked for. Before she could respond, a low growl rolled from the trees. Not human. Primal. The hair on her arms lifted. Kalen was on his feet in an instant, blade raised. From the shadows slunk a pair of yellow eyes glowing against the dark. A wolf emerged, ribs gaunt, teeth bared. Behind it, two more crept forward, their hunger palpable. Alara's heart lurched. "We can't fight them. We don't fight. We stand." Kalen's stance was solid, unwavering, his figure blocking her from the beasts. The wolves circled, their snarls weaving with the rustle of leaves. Ilara pressed against the tree, every nerve alight. The bandits were no longer the only predators in these woods. The first wolf lunged. Kalen's blade flashed, striking it aside, but another darted from the flank. Ilara screamed, scrambling back as claws raked the ground where she'd sat moments before. Kalen roared, driving his sword into the earth between them and the beast. Sparks flew as metal clashed with fang, and in that chaos, Ilara's terror turned to something sharper, fiercer. Survival. Her father's voice echoed not just run this time, but fight. The wolf's jaws snapped shut where Ilara's arm had been seconds before. She tumbled backward, her breath tearing out in a scream. The beast turned, lips curled, hunger blazing in its eyes. Kalen struck another aside, but 3 against 1 stretched even his strength thin. "Ilara, move," he barked, voice sharp as steel. Something shifted inside her. She had run from fire, run from grief, run from fear. But now, with death's teeth inches away, running would not save her. Her gaze darted to a broken branch at her feet. She seized it, the rough bark biting into her palms. When the wolf lunged again, she swung wildly. The branch cracked against its muzzle, sending the beast staggering back with a snarl of pain. Her heart pounded, shock flooding her veins. She had struck it. She had survived a moment. The victory was brief. Another wolf sprang from the side, teeth flashing. Kalen shoved forward, blade slicing, but his footing slipped on the damp ground. He grunted, the wolf's claws raking his arm as he forced it back. "Ilara!" His voice was raw, desperate. "Don't freeze." The words ripped through her hesitation. She scrambled for another weapon, eyes landing on a jagged stone near the stream. With trembling fingers, she snatched it up. The wounded wolf recovered, snarling low as it crouched to strike again. She waited, her breath steadied, muscles coiling. When it leapt, she thrust upward, driving the stone into its throat. Warmth splattered her face as the beast fell, thrashing in its final struggle. Ilara collapsed to her knees, staring at her bloodied hands. Horror and triumph tangled within her, the world spinning. Kalen dispatched the last wolf with a swift strike, chest heaving as silence reclaimed the forest. He turned to her, his expression unreadable, caught between grimness and something like pride. "You fought," her voice cracked. "I killed." "You lived," he corrected firmly, stepping closer. His hand gripped her shoulder, steadying her trembling frame. "There is a difference. Remember it." Ilara's eyes blurred, tears mixing with sweat and blood. She wanted to collapse, to bury her face in the earth and never rise again. But Kalen's grip anchored her, grounding her in a way she had never known. For the first time, she understood. This man was not just a survivor. He was a shield, yes, but also a mirror reflecting what she could become. The forest lay quiet now, moonlight silvering the corpses of the beasts. Their presence was a reminder. Even here, far from the burning ruins, death stalked her. And yet she had faced it. Kalen knelt, cleaning his blade against the grass. "Do you see now?" he asked softly, not looking at her. Her voice wavered. "See what?" "That you are not helpless. That you never were. The fire didn't choose you, Ilara. The world did." His words unsettled her, a truth too heavy to bear, yet impossible to ignore. She clenched the bloodied stone still in her hand, the weight of it both horrifying and empowering. Above them, clouds drifted, veiling the moon. The night grew colder, shadows deepening. Kalen stood scanning the darkness. "They'll be on us again soon," he muttered. "The wolves were only the beginning. Rest if you can, but be ready. The serpent blades won't stop until they finish what they started." Ilara's gaze lingered on the fallen beasts, her pulse still racing. For the first time, she felt a spark of something other than grief or fear, a spark that whispered of survival. But survival had a cost, and she had only just begun to pay it. Dawn bled slowly into the forest, painting the horizon in pale streaks of gold. The night's chill still clung to Ilara's skin, but her blood was warm, restless from what she had done. The memory of the wolf's last breath haunted her. Yet beneath the horror, something dangerous stirred, a flicker of strength she hadn't known she carried. Kalen walked ahead, his steps steady, every movement purposeful. His wounded arm was wrapped in cloth torn from his cloak, but he gave no sign of weakness. Ilara followed, exhaustion pulling at her legs, though her mind refused to quiet. Finally, she broke the silence. You said the serpent blades won't stop until they finish what they started. Why me, Kalen? What am I to them? He didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the tree line as though expecting shadows to peel free at any moment. When he finally spoke, his tone was grave. You're not what you think you are. Not just a villager's daughter. There is blood in you they fear, a name they fear. Ilara stopped in her tracks, anger flaring. Don't speak in riddles. My family is dead because of me, and you owe me the truth. Kalen turned, his face hard but not unkind. Your father was no ordinary farmer. He once stood against men like them. Long before you were born, he carried secrets that could topple the ones who rule from the shadows. Those secrets live in you now. Ilara's breath hitched, her heart a storm. She wanted to deny it, to cling to the memory of her father as the man who taught her to plant seeds and mend tools, not someone entangled in power and blood. But Kalen's eyes held no doubt, and a part of her, the part that had survived fire, wolves, and terror, knew he was right. Before she could respond, the forest erupted. A whistle sliced the air, followed by the thud of an arrow striking the earth at her feet. Down! Kalen shouted. Ilara dropped as arrows rained through the trees, embedding into trunks with vicious force. Shadows broke from the foliage. 5 men armored, the serpent sigil gleaming on their chests. The serpent blades. Kalen drew his sword, steel flashing. Stay behind me. But Ilara's blood surged hot, her body remembering the wolves, the stone, the fight for breath. She couldn't cower, not anymore. The first mercenary lunged, blade swinging. Kalen met him head-on, steel clashing with a roar of sparks. Another circled wide, eyes locking on Ilara. Her chest tightened, but her feet planted firm. She seized a fallen branch, her grip unsteady but determined. The man sneered. The girl who lived, he charged. Ilara swung with every ounce of her strength. The branch cracked across his face, stunning him long enough for Kalen to drive his sword through the man's chest. Ilara, Kalen barked, pulling her close. This is not your fight. It's already mine, she cried, her voice breaking but fierce. 2 more rushed them. Kalen blocked one, his blade dancing in brutal arcs, but the other forced Ilara back, his dagger slashing. She stumbled, pain searing across her arm where steel grazed her. The sight of her own blood sent terror spiraling, yet it also ignited something sharper. She hurled herself forward, ramming the branch into his throat. He gagged, collapsing into the dirt. When silence finally fell, 3 mercenaries lay dead, 2 retreating into the forest. Kalen's chest heaved, his blade dripping. Ilara stood trembling, bloodied but unbroken. Kalen's gaze found hers, heavy with unspoken truth. You're becoming exactly what they fear. Her heart pounded. She no longer knew if that was a curse or a destiny. The forest floor reeked of blood and smoke. Torches sputtered where they had fallen, their light flickering across lifeless faces. Ilara stood frozen, the broken branch still clenched in her hand, its bark slick with red. She wanted to release it, to cast it away, but her fingers refused to obey. Kalen knelt beside one of the dead, tearing the serpent clasp from his armor. He studied it grimly, then lifted his gaze to her. They'll send more. Now they know who you are. Her voice trembled. Then tell me, who am I? No more riddles. He rose slowly, his face shadowed by sorrow. Your father was no farmer. He once sat in the king's circle, the council that guided the realm before the serpents took power. But he was more than a voice. He was their blade, a man feared in silence. The words crushed her breath. My father carved toys for me, laughed at storms. He wasn't this. Kalen's eyes softened. He chose peace when he found your mother. He hid you, hoping you'd never inherit his shadows. But peace leaves traces. The blades were hired to erase them. Ilara's stomach twisted. Her life, her family had been destroyed because of secrets she'd never known. Why didn't he tell me? She whispered. Because he loved you, Kalen answered. He wanted you free. But fate doesn't ask, it demands. Tears stung her eyes. I never asked to be part of this. I don't want to be anyone's weapon. His jaw tightened. Neither did your father. Yet he carried the burden because others could not. And now it falls to you. Her gaze drifted to the man she had killed. His eyes stared lifelessly, a silent accusation. She turned away, bile burning her throat. The girl she had been, innocent, ordinary, felt more distant with every heartbeat. Kalen sheathed his sword. We can't stay. Their horns will call more. We head to the mountains. There's someone there who can shield you. Someone who owes me. Alara's hands trembled as she clutched the branch tighter. Protect me? Or use me like the rest? Kalen didn't answer. His silence was sharper than any blade. The wind rose suddenly, carrying a faint echo through the trees. A horn, then another. The blades were calling, their pursuit relentless. Kalen placed a firm hand on her shoulder, steady but urgent. I'll keep you alive. That much I vow, but you must be ready. Your father's shadow stretches long, and now it falls on you. Alara closed her eyes, her grip tightening on the bloodied branch. She felt fear still clawing at her chest, but beneath it something else stirred. Faint, unwelcome, yet undeniable. Strength. For the first time, she realized she wasn't only running from death. She was running toward a truth that might consume her, and part of her feared she no longer had the choice to turn back. The climb began before dawn, when mist still clung to the earth like a veil. Alara's legs burned with each step, her body aching from sleepless nights, but Kalen pressed forward without pause. Above them, the mountains loomed vast and unyielding, their snowy crowns catching the pale morning light. The path narrowed into a jagged trail carved along the cliffside. Wind howled through the peaks, sharp as knives tearing at Alara's cloak. She clutched it close, shivering. How much farther? Kalen didn't turn, far enough that the blades will think twice before chasing. But not far enough to rest. Her chest tightened. She wanted to collapse, to weep. But the mountain demanded focus. Loose stones crumbled beneath her boots, tumbling into the abyss below. One slip, and she would vanish into silence. By mid-morning, they reached a ridge overlooking the valley. Smoke curled upward in thin spirals from the forests below. Alara's throat constricted. They're burning more villages. Kalen's jaw hardened. It's how they rule, through fear. Scatter the living, silence the brave, and there is no resistance left. Her fists clenched. And what am I supposed to do? I can't fight an army. I can barely walk this cursed path. At that, he stopped. Turning, he met her gaze with steel in his eyes. You stood against wolves. You faced the blades and lived. Do not tell me you are nothing. The mountain strips weakness, but it also reveals strength. Alara faltered, her breath shallow. She looked down at her hands, raw and scarred from the climb. They no longer looked like the hands of a farmer's daughter. Before she could answer, a horn echoed faintly through the valley. Her stomach dropped. They're following. Kalen's grip tightened on his sword hilt. Faster than I hoped. He motioned her onward. We move. They pressed deeper into the pass where sheer walls of stone loomed on either side. Shadows gathered, stretching long across the path. The air grew colder, and every echo of their steps seemed to carry too far, as though the mountain itself listened. Then from a cleft ahead, a voice rang out. Kalen. Alara froze. A man stepped from the rocks, cloaked in thick furs. His hair was streaked with silver, but his eyes were sharp, keen as a hawk's. He studied them with wary calculation. Kalen lowered his sword slightly, though his stance stayed guarded. Darren? The man's mouth curved into a grim line. You've brought trouble to my door again. His gaze flicked to Alara, lingering. And this must be the reason. Heat rushed to her face. She hated the way he looked at her, as though she were a burden wrapped in flesh. She pulled her cloak tighter, but Kalen stepped in front of her. She's under my protection. Darren scoffed. Your protection is a curse, Kalen. Death follows you like a shadow. Still, after a pause, he jerked his head toward the cleft. Come. If the blades hunt her, they'll not stop at my threshold. Better to face the storm inside stone than beneath open sky. Alara hesitated, her pulse hammering. Trusting strangers had already cost her everything. Yet the horn still echoed faintly from the valley below, drawing closer. Reluctantly, she followed as the mountain swallowed them into darkness. But even as the stone walls closed around her, one thought gnawed at her heart. Had Kalen led her to safety, or into another cage? The passage narrowed into a tunnel carved by time and fire. Torches burned in iron brackets, their light painting jagged shadows on the stone walls. Alara's footsteps echoed too loudly, reminding her of how small she was in this place of rock and silence. Darren led the way, his stride steady, unhurried, as though the mountain itself bent to him. Kalen followed close behind, his hand never far from his sword. Alara kept to the middle, uneasy between them. They emerged into a cavern lit by a roaring hearth. The chamber was wide, its walls lined with shelves of maps, weapons, and weathered books. A heavy oak table dominated the center, covered in parchments weighed down by stones. This was no mere refuge. It was a stronghold. Darren pulled off his cloak and hung it by the fire. His sharp eyes settled on Ilara again, stripping away her defenses with quiet scrutiny. "So this is the girl the Blades want dead," Ilara bristled. "I have a name." His brow arched, a flicker of amusement breaking the severity of his face. "Then speak it. Ilara." Her voice did not tremble this time. Darren nodded once as if the name confirmed something he already suspected. "Your father hid you well. Too well if they've sent the Blades to finish what he began." Her heart lurched. "You knew my father?" A shadow crossed Darren's expression. He moved to the table, fingers brushing over a map stained with ash. "I fought beside him, long before he vanished into quiet life. He was a man of fire and steel, feared even by his allies. But he loved your mother more than war. That love is why you lived in peace as long as you did." The truth pressed down on Ilara, heavier than the mountain above them. Truth pressed down on Ilara, heavier than the mountain above them. "And now? What do I do with this blood I never asked for?" Darren looked at her then, not with pity but with appraisal, as if measuring her against some unseen scale. "You endure, or you rise. Those are the only choices the world offers to children of fire." Kaelin stepped closer, voice sharp. "She needs protection, not riddles." "You owe me, Darren. I've come to collect." Darren's eyes narrowed. "I remember my debts. But sheltering her will bring the Blades upon us. Protection has a price, Kaelin. Are you ready to pay it?" The air thickened between them, tension coiling like a drawn bow. Ilara stood in the middle, caught between two men who spoke as though her life were a burden to bargain over. "I won't be traded like coin," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the silence. Both men turned toward her, surprise flickering in their eyes. "If I stay, it will be my choice. And if I leave, it will be mine as well." Darren studied her for a long, heavy moment, then inclined his head slightly. "There's steel in you. Perhaps your father was right to hide you for a time." Before Ilara could respond, a low tremor shook the cavern. Dust fell from the ceiling. The torches flickered. Kaelin's sword was out in an instant. "They found us." Darren grabbed a bow from the wall, his voice grim. "The mountain paths are crawling with their scouts. It seems fate has delivered the fight to our door sooner than expected." Ilara's pulse pounded. Her hands tightened around the branch she still carried, its bark worn smooth. She thought of fire, of screams, of wolves. And though fear surged in her chest, she found her voice steady. "Then we fight." The mountain shook with the thunder of boots. Horns howled through the tunnels, their echoes bouncing from stone to stone. Ilara pressed her back to the cold wall, her fingers clutching the branch that had become more than wood. It was proof she had survived. Darren strung his bow with practiced speed, his face grim. "They've breached the lower path. There'll be no holding them long." Kaelin's sword was already drawn, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Then we hold them as long as we can." His eyes flicked to Ilara. "Stay close," but she shook her head. "No, I won't cower while you bleed for me." Before either man could answer, shadows spilled into the chamber. The serpent blades came like a wave, their armor gleaming with serpent sigils, their eyes hungry for blood. Steel clashed as Kaelin met the first, his blade cutting sparks from the intruder's axe. Darren's arrows sang, striking mercenaries before they reached the firelight. Yet for everyone that fell, two more surged forward. The air filled with the roar of battle, with the copper stench of blood. Ilara's pulse hammered. Fear clawed at her chest, urging her to run. But something stronger kept her rooted. She thought of her father, of the man Kaelin and Darren described, a warrior who had traded steel for family. She thought of her mother's songs, of her brother's laughter now silenced, and she knew she could not hide. A mercenary broke past Kaelin, lunging for her. Without thought, Ilara swung her branch, striking his temple with a crack that echoed through the chamber. He crumpled at her feet. Her breath came ragged, but her grip only tightened. Kaelin glanced back, pride flickering in his eyes. "Good. Again if you must." The battle raged, but the mountain was not endless. The blades pressed closer, driving them toward the rear wall. Then Darren's cry split the air. An enemy sword had pierced his side. He staggered, loosing one last arrow before collapsing near the hearth. "Darren!" Ilara dropped to his side, blood seeping hot against her hands. His face had gone pale, lips tight with pain. "Don't waste tears," he rasped, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "I owed Kaelin. Debt repaid. Now, it falls to you." His hand, shaking, pressed something into hers, a small iron pendant marked with the circle's crest. "Your father carried this once. Keep it. Remember who you are." Then his eyes dimmed, leaving silence heavier than the mountain itself. Ilara's throat burned, but no scream escaped. She rose slowly, pendant clutched in one fist, branch in the other. The girl who had once run from fire was gone. What stood in her place was something harder, sharper. The mercenaries hesitated, sensing the shift. Kaelin moved to her side, blood streaking his cheek, his chest heaving. "Ilara!" She met his gaze, her own steady, fierce. "This ends with me." The chamber narrowed into a throat of stone, torches sputtering as the wind clawed at their flames. Ilara stepped forward, Kaelin at her side, the pendant heavy in her palm. The serpent blades parted, making way for the figure who emerged from their ranks. Their leader. He was taller than the rest, his armor blackened with years of battle, his helm shaped like the open jaws of a serpent. His voice was smooth, venomous. "So the daughter lives. Your father defied us, girl, but you will finish what he could not. Kneel and the pain ends." Ilara's grip on the branch trembled, not from fear, but from fury. She lifted her chin. "You burned my home. You stole my family. I will never kneel." A murmur rippled through the blades. Kaelin raised his sword, but Ilara lifted a hand, stopping him. The leader's eyes gleamed with amusement. "You would face me yourself. With a stick?" Her voice rang clear, steadier than she imagined. "Not a stick. My father's strength. My mother's voice. My brother's laughter. That's what I carry. And it's more than enough." The warlord lunged, steel flashing. Ilara ducked low, the branch sweeping across his knees. He stumbled, surprised by the force. Kaelin seized the opening, his blades striking sparks against the warlord's armor. The clash shook the chamber, but still the serpent helm rose again. The leader's gauntlet closed around Ilara's throat, lifting her from the ground. His hiss cut through her gasps. "You are nothing." Her fingers closed around the pendant. With a burst of strength born from loss and love alike, she drove it into the gap of his helm. The iron seared his flesh as if a flame. He howled, dropping her. Kaelin's sword found its mark then, plunging deep. The warlord's body crumpled, serpent helm clattering across the stone floor. The surviving blades froze. Leaderless, their will shattered. One by one they fled into the tunnels, their torches dwindling into darkness. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of dying fire. Ilara stood in the wreckage, chest heaving, the pendant warm in her hand. Kaelin wiped blood from his blade, his gaze fixed on her. Not as the frightened girl he had once carried from the ash, but as something wholly transformed. "You ended it," he said softly. "No," she whispered. "We ended it." Her eyes lingered on Darren's still form in the shadows. "All of us." Kaelin stepped closer, brushing soot from her cheek with a hand that trembled more than his voice. "Your father would have been proud." Tears welled, but for the first time they did not break her. She slipped the pendant around her neck, feeling its weight settle like armor. The night outside was clear, stars strewn like scattered embers across the sky. Ilara and Kaelin walked from the cavern together, the mountain winds carrying the scent of pine and the first fragile promise of dawn. The past was ash. The future uncertain, but within her chest, a fire burned that no blade could ever extinguish. No blade could ever extinguish.